I didn't come to Maple Creek to fall in love with a cowboy. I came to disappear. I came because my therapist said things like nervous exhaustion and you re-operating in survival mode. And my boss said things like, it's just a busy season. And we'll promote you in the spring, promise. And my ex said nothing at all for 6 months and then texted me a photo of his engagement ring on someone else's hand. So I packed up the life I'd poured 10 years into and rented a cheap little cabin on the edge of a town I barely remembered. Maple Creek population, everyone knows everyone else's business. The cabin looked romantic in the listing photos, soft light in the windows. Snow piled halfway up the porch, a cedar tree out front dusted white. In real life, the porch sagged, the paint peeled, and the wind whistled through gaps in the doorframe. The night I arrived, 3 days before Christmas, the temperature dropped so fast the air felt like broken glass. I wrestled my suitcase up the steps, fumbled with the key, and stepped into a wall of cold. My breath puffed in front of me. I could see it in the beam of my phone flashlight. Of course, I muttered. Perfect. Icebox chic. The landlord, a woman named Barb, who'd answered all my emails with "sounds good dear," had promised the baseboard heaters. Were old but reliable. They hummed when I turned the dial, but the place stayed stubbornly freezing. I dumped my duffel by the sagging couch, pulled off my gloves and stared at the wood stove in the corner. It stared back at me. Black, silent, smug. I have 3 degrees, I told it. How hard can this be? I found a stack of logs in a metal rack by the back door. Newspaper, matches. I built something that looked like the fires I'd seen in movies. Touched the match to the crumpled paper, and watched it flare. For 10 glorious seconds, it crackled. Flames licked up the logs. Then it wheezed and died, leaving a curl of smoke and the faint smell of burnt ink. I tried again. And again. By the 3rd attempt, my fingers were numb. My shoulders were shaking from equal parts cold and frustration, and I was dangerously close to crying over a pile of stubborn wood. Somewhere outside, a truck engine rumbled. I heard tires crunch on snow. Headlights washed across the frosted window. I froze, heart kicking up. Then a solid knock sounded on the front door. Not frantic, not tentative. Just there. Steady. Yeah? I called, instantly regretting how small and squeaky my voice sounded. Barb sent me. A man's voice answered, muffled through the wood. Said you'd be up here tonight and that the stove might give you trouble. The relief I felt was not rational. I opened the door halfway, keeping my hand on the knob. The man on the porch was all winter. Tall, broad shoulders under a heavy canvas jacket dusted with snow. Dark knit beanie pulled low over hair I couldn't see, jaw shadowed with scruff. His cheeks were red from the cold, eyes a steady blue-gray that made me think of a frozen pond. He held a milk crate of split logs easily in one gloved hand, as if it weighed nothing. Hi, he said. I'm Wes. He didn't smile exactly, but something around his eyes softened. He had that calm, grounded look of somebody who spent more time under the sky than under fluorescent lights. I'm Grace, I said, stepping back a little to let the the slightly less cold air from inside hit my face. And yes, the stove hates me. His gaze swept the little living room, taking in the piles of unpacked bags, the dead wood in the stove, the way I was wrapped in my city coat like a burrito. You're freezing, he said, like it was a fact, not a judgment. Can I come in? He could have been anybody. That thought flickered across my mind like a caution sign. Stranger. Remote cabin. Night. But he'd said Barb's name. And he looked at me like a person, not prey. Sure, I said, opening the door wider. Provided you don't make fun of my fire-building skills. No promises, he replied mildly, stepping inside. He moved like he'd done this 100 times, kicked snow off his boots by the mat, set the crate down, shrugged out of his jacket in one efficient motion. Underneath, he wore a worn plaid shirt and faded jeans. His hands, when he tugged off his gloves, were nicked and rough veins prominent. Wood stove hands. He knelt in front of the stove and opened the little door, peering inside. You kind of smothered it, he said. Logs are too big for a cold start. You gotta give it smaller stuff to chew on. I gave it paper, I protested. He glanced back at me. You mind if I show you? Please do, I said. I'm about 3 minutes away from setting my entire life on fire instead. That got a tiny huff of laughter out of him. He worked quietly, pulling out the logs I'd stacked, replacing them with newspaper he tore into thin strips, then smaller pieces of kindling from his crate. Stove's like a person, he said after a minute. You don't hand somebody a whole tree and say, here, eat this. You start with something they can actually swallow. I feel like I've dated that stove, I muttered. All expectation, no follow-through. He looked up sharply, surprise flickering through his eyes. Then, finally, he smiled. Just a little, but it changed his whole face. He struck a match, shielded it with his hand, and held it to the paper. The flame caught, then spread, threads of fire weaving through the kindling. Once it's going, he said, then you give it the bigger pieces. Slowly. Let the heat build. Within a few minutes, the logs were catching, real heat pushing against my shins. I exhaled something I didn't realize I'd been holding. Almost relief. Almost gratitude. Almost the first edge of feeling safe. Thank you, I said. You're welcome. He stood, brushing a bit of ash off his jeans with the side of his hand. Barb said you were up here by yourself. Is that a problem? I asked, suddenly defensive. I mean, is that not done in Maple Creek? A woman renting a place alone? He shook his head. Not a problem, he said. Just means folks are gone no worry if they don't see smoke from your chimney. Oh, I looked at the stove, then back at him. Is that a thing? In winter? He shrugged. Yeah, smoke means heat. Heat means you're all right. He nodded toward the window. Storm's blowing in tomorrow night. You got groceries? Some, I said. I stopped at the little store on my way through town. Pretty sure the cashier and the guy stacking oranges knew my birth weight by the time I left. That made him smile again, quick and quiet. That's Maple Creek, he said. We're nosy, but we'll pull you out of a ditch at 3 a.m. I believed him. Not Maple Creek in general. Him. There was something about the way he stood, feet planted solid, weight easy, shoulders relaxed but ready, that whispered, if the storm gets worse, he'll stay. If you were here with us right now, I thought suddenly, imagining whoever might be listening to this story through their headphones. What's the first thing you'd do in this little cabin? Stand in front of the stove and thaw out? Peek through the frosted window? Or just sit on the couch and breathe for a minute, letting the warmth soak in? I realized I'd gone quiet a beat too long when he cleared his throat gently. You from around here? He asked. Not exactly, I said. My parents grew up 2 towns over. We came here for the Christmas festival when I was little. I remember hot chocolate and a lot of very serious debates over who got the last gingerbread man. You picked a good year to come back, he said. Market's gotten better, lights are prettier. Music's still off-key though. You like it? I asked. The off-key parts? He said. Yeah. Feels honest. He pulled his jacket back on. I'll swing by and check your pipes after the storm, he said. Sometimes the line to this cabin freezes. Barb's been meaning to insulate it better, but... He lifted one shoulder. But Barb is more sounds good, dear, then I'll get right on that, I supplied. He huffed. Something like that. In the meantime, keep that fire fed. Lots of small pieces. Don't let it go out if you can help it. Got it, I said. Grace versus stove, round 2. If the stove wins, holler. He tipped his head toward the road. I'm just up the hill a ways. Old bunkhouse with the crooked antenna. Thank you, I said again, softer this time. He nodded once. I'm not leaving you out here alone, he said simply. Not tonight. Not any night like this. He meant he'd check on me. That he'd make sure I wasn't found frozen in the spring thaw like a badly dressed popsicle, but something in the way he said it landed deeper. The door shut behind him with a gentle thump. Outside, his boots crunched on the snow. The truck engine started. Headlights swept across the ceiling, then disappeared. Inside, the fire caught properly, heat pouring into the little cabin. I sank onto the couch, held my hands out to the warmth and let myself feel just for a moment. Not strong, not fine, not performing. Just cold. Just tired. Just a woman in a small place on the edge of a winter town, who'd just been rescued from her own stubbornness by a cowboy with sawdust on his hands and a quiet voice. I didn't know then that he'd spend the winter letting me think he was barely scraping by. I didn't know that he was the one people in this county called boss when he wasn't around. I didn't know that his family's Christmas dinner would change everything I thought I knew about him. If I had, I might have been a lot more careful with my heart, or maybe I would have run a lot sooner. The storm came like he said it would. By late afternoon the next day, the sky had gone from pale blue to heavy gray, hanging low over the fields. Snow started as a soft dusting, then thickened into those big, swooping flakes that make the whole world feel like a snow globe. I kept the stove fed like Wes had shown me, starting to find a rhythm in it. Paper, kindling, small logs, let it catch. Add more. There was something weirdly satisfying about it, like tending a living thing that rewarded your care with warmth. By evening the wind had picked up, rattling the old windows, making the pine tree out front sway. I was standing at the counter in the tiny kitchen, trying to decide if it was worth cooking an actual meal or if crackers and cheese counted as dinner in a storm, when headlights washed across the cabin again. A knock sounded on the door. This time I yanked it open with more eagerness than a woman who prides herself on her independence probably should show. Wes stood there, cap pulled low, jacket dusted in fresh snow. He held a paper grocery bag in one arm, a small cooler in the other. "Just checking on you," he said. "And bringing reinforcements." "Is that?" I pointed at the cooler. "Chili," he said. "And biscuits," Edna down at the diner insisted. Said, and I quote, "If that girl is up there alone, she's not eating canned soup on my watch." I laughed, the sound puffing white in the doorway. "I remember Edna," I said. "She ran the bakery stall at the Christmas market when I was a kid, right? The one with the cookies shaped like little reindeer?" "That's her," he said. "She still has opinions about everybody's life." "You're on her nice list, though. For now, I'd like to keep it that way," I said. "Come in, before I freeze to the threshold." He stepped inside, stomping snow off his boots. The firelight flickered on his face, catching in the scruff along his jaw, the little lines fanning from the corners of his eyes when he squinted at the stove. "Looks like you won round 2, he said. "I had an excellent teacher," I replied modestly. He carried the cooler to the kitchen, set it on the counter, and started unpacking without asking where anything was. Like he'd been here before. Or in 100 cabins like it. "I can do that," I said, stepping closer. "I know," he said. "But my stove at the bunkhouse is already fed, and the wind's not going anywhere for a while. Might as well make myself useful." It was such a simple thing, him moving around my little borrowed kitchen, sleeves pushed up, forearms strong and tan from a summer that felt 1,000 miles away, that my chest ached. In the city, nobody showed up just because a storm was coming. You got groceries delivered by a stranger you never saw. You ordered takeout that arrived lukewarm in a paper bag. You sat under harsh overhead lights scrolling through social media, watching other people's curated versions of warmth. This felt different. He stood next to me at the stove, stirring the chili in a dented pot. The smell of tomatoes and spices filled the cabin, mixing with the scent of burning pine. "So," he said, "what brought you to Maple Creek, really?" "My car," I said. "It's blue and apparently terrible at snow." He shot me a look. "That your final answer?" I watched the spoon make small circles through the thick red sauce. "Burnout," I said quietly. "Heartbreak. The usual cliché." He didn't say "I'm sorry." He didn't say "you'll get over it." He just waited. "My boyfriend X was a financial planner," I said. "Very successful, very polished. Loved expensive watches and talking about compounding interest." "Sounds fun," Wes said carefully. "That's what I thought," I said. "Someone steady, someone who had a plan, someone who'd make sure I was never poor." The word twisted in my mouth. Wes's jaw tightened just a fraction. But somewhere along the way, I continued, his plan became my life. My schedule, my wardrobe, my friends, my everything. The chili bubbled softly. When I started having panic attacks on Sunday nights because I couldn't face Monday meetings, he told me to toughen up and stop being dramatic. When I said I wanted to take a break from work and figure out what I actually wanted, he said, "Only people with trust funds get to do that." Wes's hand stilled on the spoon. "Sounds like he was real generous with his compassion," he said. "He liked being the one in control," I said. "Liked paying for things, liked reminding me he was paying for things. And you?" Wes asked. "I liked not living paycheck to paycheck," I admitted. "I liked not worrying if my car would start in the morning. I liked not doing the math at the grocery store every week." I stared at my hands, but I hated feeling like an accessory, I said. Like something on his arm that he could upgrade if I stopped matching his image. We were quiet for a moment. The only sounds the gentle simmer of chili and the soft hiss of snow against the window. "So," he said, "you left." I left. I said, "Quit my job. Broke the lease. Put my things in storage. Booked this cabin." I told my mom I was working remotely for a while. Which is not entirely a lie. I do some freelance copywriting now. Enough to cover my student loan payment and basic bills. "How's that feel?" he asked. "Terrifying," I said honestly. "And lighter, like maybe I'm finally living my actual life instead of the one I thought I had to live." He nodded slowly. "You don't have to spend this Christmas proving you're okay," he said. Not to him. Not to anybody. The words hit me in that deep, hollow place in my chest. The one that had been echoing for a year. "You barely know me," I whispered. He shrugged one shoulder. "Don't need to know everything to see someone's hurt," he said. "Storms all look different, but the way people hunch their shoulders in the wind? That's the same." My throat got hot. "Okay," I said, voice a little wobbly. "Now you sound like some kind of prairie therapist." He smiled again, small and shy. "Don't tell the guys," he said. "They'll never let me live it down." We ate at the little table by the window, bowls of chili warming our hands, biscuits soaking up red sauce. Outside, the world disappeared in swirling white. "You live in the bunkhouse full-time?" I asked between bites. He nodded. "Boss lets me fix the place up," he said. "As long as I keep the fences checked and the cattle fed. He doesn't care how I decorate the walls." "Is that why you're delivering firewood and chili to random renters?" I asked. "Part of your job description?" "I do chores for Barb and Edna in exchange for a break on my rent," he said. "And I don't like thinking about somebody up here freezing because they don't know how to get a stove started." There it was again, that simple, quiet sense of responsibility. I glanced at his jacket draped over the back of the chair. The elbow was worn thin, near a patch someone had stitched by hand. The hem was frayed. The boots by the door had cracks in the leather. He drove an old truck. Lived in a bunkhouse. Traded work for rent. He was poor, I thought, or at least close enough to it that he had to watch every dollar. Something inside me both flinched and softened at the thought. I knew what that felt like from my childhood parents stretching paychecks, bills stacked in careful piles, my mom cutting coupons at the kitchen table. I knew the shame of field trip forms that stayed in backpacks too long because they meant asking for money that wasn't to there. But he didn't look ashamed, he looked peaceful. Like simplicity fit him. After dinner, we sat by the fire, the lamplight soft on the worn rug between us. He told me about the ranch he worked on, fences that always broke in the same spots, a mule that hated everyone but him. Calves born in the middle of snowstorms who needed to be hauled into the kitchen to warm up. I told him about the city subways and coffee shops, the way skyscrapers trapped the wind between them. My favorite park bench where I used to eat lunch and pretend the pigeons were tiny, judgmental dinosaurs. He laughed at that, head tipping back, the sound surprising both of us. If you want to hear what he says next, I thought, catching my own storytelling brain kicking in, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the rest of this night. The thought made me smile. Maybe I'd turn this winter into a story someday. Maybe I wouldn't. For now, it was just my life. When it got late, he stood, pulling on his jacket. "Storm's supposed to taper off by morning," he said. "You'll be plowed out by noon. I'll be back through to check that line." "You don't have to keep checking on me," I said. "You've got your own life. Your own mules to wrangle." He looked down at me, eyes serious. "Grace," he said quietly. "You're here now, you're in the circle. That means people see you. You don't just disappear between storms." My chest tightened. "I'm not used to that," I admitted. "In the city, you can fall apart and your neighbor doesn't even notice as long as you stop playing your music too loud." "Well," he said, "out here we don't always say the right thing. But we'll show up with chili." The wind gusted when he opened the door, snow swirling in around his boots. "Good night," I said. He tipped his head, the brim of his beanie catching the lamplight. "Night, Grace," he said. "Keep the fire fed." I did, all winter. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that felt half borrowed, half brand new. I wrote in the morning's freelance deadlines, bits of personal essays that might never see the light of day, lines that started as journal entries and turned into something else. Sometimes those something else's sounded suspiciously like the beginning of cowboy Christmas stories. Snow, lantern light. Men with quiet eyes. In the afternoons, I walked into town along the plowed road, my breath puffing clouds in the cold. Maple Creek in December looked like it had been designed for a postcard. Main Street was a row of false fronts and brick, Christmas lights strung between lampposts, wreaths on doors. The diner's windows fogged with steam, handwritten signs promising today a special, beef stew and Edna's, famous cinnamon rolls. The first time I walked in, people looked up, heads turned, conversations dipped. A bell over the door jingled in a way that felt way too loud. Then Edna bustled out from behind the counter, flower on her apron, gray hair tucked under a Santa hat. "About time you came down from that hill," she said, pointing a wooden spoon at me. "You Grace Carter?" "Yes," I said, taken aback. "How did you—" "Barb told me," she said. "And Wes, and my cousin who lives 3 houses over from your landlord. Sit. You look like a strong wind could knock you over." "Coffee?" "Yes, ma'am," I said automatically, then corrected myself. "I mean yes, please." She passed me a mug that smelled like heaven and slid a cinnamon roll on a plate toward me. "Just to get some color back in your face." I started to protest, then didn't. I was learning. Wes was there more often than not, at the diner, at the feed store, in the hardware aisle, at the small general store. Sometimes I wondered if he was everywhere or if I was just learning to see where he'd already been. He always looked the same. Worn jacket, old jeans, a knit beanie or a hat pulled low. Hands rough and nicked. Truck older than me, but purring like a content cat. If I didn't know better, I'd say he was barely scraping by. He always paid for his coffee in cash, fingers counting bills like he knew exactly what he had and exactly what each cup cost him. One afternoon, a week before Christmas, I found him at the feed store, staring at a wall of work gloves with a thoughtful frown. "What's the occasion?" I asked, stepping up beside him. "Hot date with some hay bales?" He smirked. "Boss is supplying chaps for the hay bales," he said. "I need something that doesn't rip in 2 weeks." "What's wrong with the ones you have?" I asked. He held up his hand. The glove he wore had a hole in the thumb big enough that his skin showed through. Another patch had been sewn onto the palm with mismatched thread. "Charming," I said. "Very." "Rustic. Rustic is code for broke," he said dryly. My stomach gave a weird little flip. "You said it, not me," I said. I didn't ask about the boss or why the boss wasn't paying for new gloves. I didn't ask if he had health insurance or what happened if he broke his leg out in the pasture. I didn't ask because I didn't want to see my excess smirk in my memory the way he'd say, "That's why people like that can't take time off. They live too close to the edge." Instead, I asked, "Can I buy you a pair for Christmas?" He blinked. "No," he said immediately. "Absolutely not." My face flushed. "Wow," I said. "Sure, thanks for making that feel awful." He turned toward me, eyes softening when he saw my expression. "That came out wrong," he said quietly. I appreciate the thought. I really do. But I don't want you feeling like you gotta fix my life. Or pity me. I don't pity you, I said, stung. I just wanted to do something nice. You being here is nice, he said. Your cabin light being on when I drive by. You sitting at the diner, elbow deep in Edna's cinnamon rolls. That's more than enough. Something in his voice made my anger fizzle. Okay, I said after a moment. Then can I at least help you debate the merits of goatskin versus cowhide? Because this wall is giving me decision fatigue. He huffed out a small laugh. Deal, he said. We stood side by side, reading labels aloud, poking at seams, comparing price tags. He picked the second cheapest pair, not the very bottom of the row. The ones that would last, but still make his wallet wince. I watched him pay, watched the way he tucked the change into his pocket, watched his shoulders loosen just a little when the transaction was done. He had money. Some money. But not let's skip thinking about it money. Not I'll cover both our bills without blinking money. In a strange way. It comforted me. We were on the same planet, same level. I knew how to stretch a grocery budget till it squeaked. I knew the careful calculus of eat beans now so you can afford to say yes to something that matters later. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the person in the relationship or almost relationship who had to be grateful for someone else's generosity. It felt like we were choosing each other. From the same side of the ledger. If you were here with us, then two people standing in front of a wall of gloves under fluorescent lights, arguing about reinforced palms and winter lining, you might have thought, this is boring. But I promise you, that's where the real romance started. Not on the dance floor. Not under the mistletoe. Right there in that feed store aisle where I realized I wasn't performing anymore. I was just myself and he was just Wes, or so I thought. It snowed the day he invited me to his family's Christmas dinner. Of course it did. Light flakes drifted down like ash from some peaceful, distant fire, dusting the pine branches, catching on our eyelashes when we cleaned out the barn. Yes, I was helping in the barn by then. Just for an hour, he'd said one afternoon, weeks earlier. Get you out of that cabin, give you something real to do with your hands. Writing is real, I'd protested. Sure, he'd said. But fence posts don't care if you use the wrong, he'd taught me how to fork hay without stabbing myself, how to snap frozen latches open without losing fingers. How to talk to the old Mare with her head hung over the stall door, like she'd seen everything and found most of it mildly disappointing. Now on the 23rd of December, my boots were permanently stained with manure. My jeans had a rip on one knee from an overenthusiastic calf, and my hair smelled faintly of hay no matter how much shampoo I used. I'd never felt more real. We were leaning against the stall wall, catching our breath while the cows munched contentedly, when he cleared his throat. You got plans for Christmas Day? He asked, eyes on the cow in front of us like he was asking about the weather. Beyond not burning the cabin down and calling my mother? I said, not really. You should come to dinner, he said. My heart thumped. Dinner? I repeated. At my folks' place, he said. Couple miles past the bunkhouse. We do a big midday meal. Too many side dishes. Too many opinions about football. Panic flared at the edges of my mind. Meet the family. On Christmas. No pressure. I don't want to intrude, I said quickly. I'm sure your mom has a seating chart and a guest list and a whole system. He shook his head. Mom always sets one extra place, he said. In case there's somebody who needs it. She'd detan my hide if she found out I let you sit up in that cabin alone while she had a pot roast in the oven. I thought of my own childhood table, chairs always full. My parents stretching food in chairs and hearts to make room for anyone who needed it. I thought of last Christmas me at a friend of a friend's party, drinking lukewarm punch while everyone else coupled up under fairy lights. I thought of how it had felt to sit in the Maple Creek church the week before, candle in my hand, his shoulder warm next to mine, singing Silent Night, with my throat tight. I'd like that, I heard myself say. If you're sure. He finally looked at me. I'm sure, he said. And if you get overwhelmed, we'll step out on the porch. My nephew'll probably set something on fire in the yard. Easy escape. I laughed, the image popping fully formed into my mind. Okay, I said. Should I bring something? Just yourself, he said. It should have tipped me off, that answer. Just yourself. Not a dish, not a salad, not a dessert. Just me. Like the food would be taken care of. Like everything would be taken care of. But I didn't know then what everything meant in Wes's world. I only knew what it meant in mine. Christmas Day dawned clear and cold. The sky was a pale, washed-out blue, sun bright on the snow. My breath fogged in the air when I stepped onto the porch. I'd chosen my outfit with a kind of anxious care-nice jeans, my soft green sweater, the one good pair of boots I owned that didn't have manure on them. My grandmother's silver snowflake earrings. I felt simple, but pretty. Good enough for a family who ate chili out of coolers and patched their own gloves. At least that's what I thought. Wes picked me up at 11 in his truck, hair damp like he'd just showered, jaw clean-shaven for once. It did unsettling things to my heart, seeing him without the scruff. Like I was seeing another version of him layered under the one I'd gotten used to. "You clean up nice," I blurted, cheeks warming. He glanced at me, eyes lingering a second longer than usual. "So do you," he said quietly. The truck rumbled down the lane, past the bunkhouse, out along a road I hadn't taken yet. "Your parents live far?" I asked. "Not far," he said. "Just up. You'll see." The road climbed gently at first, winding through bare cottonwoods and snow-laden spruce. Then it began to rise more sharply. And then we crested a hill and my breath caught. I'd seen ranch houses before. Farmhouses, my grandparents' place, with its wraparound porch and peeling paint and rusting swing set out back. This was not that. Below us, spread out like something from a winter postcard, was a sprawling ranch complex. A big 2-story lodge-style house with a wide porch and tall windows, smoke curling from multiple chimneys. Barns, outbuildings, fenced pastures stretching out to the horizon. Lanterns hung from porch posts, glowing even in daylight. A massive pine tree stood near the house, decked out in white lights and red ribbons. 2 long lines of trucks and SUVs were already parked along the drive. A stone sign at the turnoff read, in tasteful carved letters, "Harper Ridge Ranch." My brain did a slow, grinding double take. Harper Ridge. I'd heard that name, on local radio spots. On the sign outside town that thanked the ranch for sponsoring the Christmas market. On the side of the new community center building. Harper Ridge donated coats to the school by the dozen. Harper Ridge paid for the fireworks every 4th of July. Harper Ridge sponsored the Little League team. Wes drove through the big arched gate without hesitation. My stomach dropped to somewhere near my boots. "Wes," I said slowly, "is this your boss's place?" He took a breath. "My last name's Harper," he said quietly. "My family runs the ranch." The world tilted. "You what?" I stared at him. "You live in a bunkhouse." "I like the bunkhouse," he said. "Peaceful down there." "You patch your gloves," I said, my voice rising. "You buy the second cheapest pair. You split diner checks. You told me you traded work for rent." "I do," he said. "Harper Ridge doesn't mean I get to be careless. Mom and Dad would have my hide if I started throwing money around like confetti. We work for what we have, same as anyone." I just didn't lead with the sign on the gate. I heard the words. They bounced off the part of me that had slowly, carefully, finally begun to feel safe with him. Then they hit the part that remembered my ex. The way he'd waited 3 months to tell me about his family's trust fund. The way he'd chuckled when I'd said, "I thought you were just a middle manager," and answered, "I didn't want to scare you off," like his money was both a joke and a test. "You let me think you were poor," I whispered. "I never said I'm poor," Wes said, jaw tight. "You made assumptions." I let M stand. The truck rolled to a stop in front of the house. Families climbed out of vehicles around us, kids shrieking as they ran toward the porch, arms full of wrapped packages. I couldn't move. "Why?" I asked, still staring straight ahead. "Why would you do that?" He watched me for a long moment. "Because every woman I've dated who knew my last name first Saw this place before they saw me, he said quietly. Because I got tired of wondering if they liked the house or the man who slept in the bunkhouse down the hill. He swallowed. Because it felt good to have someone look at my worn-out gloves and not flinch, he said. To hear you talk about stretching groceries and think she gets it. She doesn't need a 6-figure bank account to feel safe. My chest hurt. And you didn't think I deserved to know? I asked. That the man who showed up in my doorway with firewood and chili also owned half the county? His mouth tightened. That's not fair, he said. My parents worked this land all their lives. Their parents before them. We're land rich, sure, but money rich? He shook his head. You've seen my jacket. You've seen my truck. I've also seen your name on half the donation plaques in town, I snapped. Silence fell. Kids ran past the truck, their boots crunching in snow. Someone shouted, Luke! Glad you made it. Across the yard. Luke. Not Wes. Your name isn't even Wes, I said, the realization hitting a second too late. It's Wesley Lucas Harper, he said. Everyone calls me Luke or Wes. I wasn't lying about that part. No, I said. Hand on the door handle. Just everything else. Grace, he said, voice low. Please, I can't. I shook my head, throat tight. I can't walk in there and smile and eat your mother's roast and pretend this is normal. I can't sit at that table not knowing if your sisters or cousins see me as the woman you've been spending time with or some charity case you picked up in a rental cabin. His shoulders flinched, like I'd hit him. You are not, he began. I don't know what I am to you, I said. Because I don't know who you are. Heat pricked behind my eyes. I need a minute, I said. Or 10. He stared at me, pain flickering across his face. If you stay, he said quietly, I'll be right here. If you go, I'm still one call away. The words were gentle, steady, the opposite of manipulative. But my fear didn't care. I can't do this right now, I whispered. I opened the truck door. The cold hit me like a slap. I welcomed it. Grace, he called after me. I didn't look back. I walked down the long drive, boots crunching, jaw clenched. Somewhere behind me, a woman's voice called, Luke, where's your friend? And a child shrieked with laughter as someone scooped them up. I kept walking until the house was out of sight, until my breath came in hard puffs. I ended up at the edge of a pasture fence, gripping the cold wood, staring out at the snow. Anger tangled with shame in my chest. I'd wanted simple, real. Instead, I'd walked right back into a life where a man could decide how much of his world I got to see and when. Tell me in the comments, my storyteller brain whispered bitterly. Would you trust him yet? If you were in my boots? Or would you run from that big house too? I didn't know if I was overreacting. I just knew that it hurt. I stayed there until my fingers went numb, then walked the shoulder of the road back toward my cabin, not trusting myself to call anyone, least of all him. He didn't show up at the cabin that night. Some stubborn small part of me had expected him to, had pictured his truck headlights cutting through the dark, his boots on the porch, his knock on the door. He didn't come the next morning either. The absence sat heavy in the little space. I made coffee. Didn't drink it. I started 3 different emails to my mother and deleted them all. I opened a blank document on my laptop and wrote, he let me believe he was poor all winter. And I let myself believe that meant he couldn't hurt me the way rich men had before. I stared at it until the words blurred. Around noon, a truck engine rumbled outside. My heart leaped in my throat. Then I heard a very specific way of slamming a truck door. Not angry, just decisive. A knock on the cabin door. I opened it to find him standing there, hat in his hands, snow on his shoulders. He looked rougher than usual, like he hadn't slept much. Hi, he said. Hey, I answered, every nerve buzzing. We stood there for a moment, breath fogging between us. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I hesitated. Then I stepped back. He entered slowly, like the cabin was holy ground now. Like he wasn't sure he was welcome. He didn't shrug his jacket off. just stood by the door, hat twisting in his hands. How was dinner? I asked, trying and failing to keep the bite out of my voice. Loud, he said. Crowded. Mom kept his skin where you were. Nephew did set something on fire. I put it out. Of course you did. I folded my arms. Grace, he said. I'm sorry. Which part? I asked. The part where you let me believe you were broke? Or the part where you waited until we were literally in your driveway to tell me the truth? He flinched. I should have told you sooner, he admitted. You're right about that. I kept waiting for the right moment, and then there never seemed to be one that didn't feel like I was bragging. I don't care about bragging, I said. I care about honesty. He nodded slowly. I know, he said. The thing is, Grace. I was honest about the parts that matter most to me, my work, my bunkhouse, my stubborn mule, my faith, my dad's bad jokes. His eyes met mine. I told you about the nights I sleep in the barn to sit with a cow that's having a hard time. I told you about the summers I spend on the back of a horse instead of some yacht in the Bahamas. That doesn't cancel out what you didn't say, I whispered. No, he said. It doesn't, but I need you to understand what this place is to me. He stepped forward, just a little. Harper Ridge isn't a pile of money in a bank, he said. It's my great-granddad's calloused hands. It's the hill my mom sledded on when she was 5. It's the kitchen my dad danced in with her on their 30th anniversary. It's the pasture where my brother... He stopped, breath catching. My anger softened a fraction. You don't talk about him, I said quietly. Your brother. He gave a short, humorless laugh. Not much to talk about anymore, he said. He's been gone 6 years. I'm sorry, I whispered. Car wreck, he said. Black ice, wrong corner. He was 28. He stared past me, jaw set. Everybody assumed I'd step in. Fill his shoes, he said. Be the golden boy. The public face of Harper Ridge. Schmooze the donors. Smile for the cameras when we cut ribbons on community centers. Is that why there's a big sign with your name on it? I asked softly. Yeah, he said. But that's not me, not all of me. I'd rather be out in the back pasture in the freezing rain fixing a busted trough than in some boardroom talking about margins. He looked at me, eyes raw. So I moved into the bunkhouse, he said. I insisted on talking the same paycheck as the other hands. I wanted to know I could live on my own 2 feet, not just on my last name. Could you? I asked. Yeah, he said. On paper I'm modest. Land's in a trust. I can't just sell it and bail. I get a cut of the profit same as everyone in the family. Enough to live on, not enough to coast. He shrugged. Mom and Dad still own the big house. I go up for dinners and meetings and calf reports. But where I lay my head at night, that's my choice. And you chose, I gestured around, to show me that part. Not the rest. I chose to see if you liked that part first, he said. If you liked me without the sign, without the story that comes with Harper Ridge, I was going to tell you the whole thing. I swear. I almost did 3 different times. In the diner. At the fence line when you fell in that snowdrift. In church when you cried during, oh come, Emmanuel. Heat rushed to my face. You were watching me cry? I asked. It was kinda hard to miss, he said gently. You had mascara on your cheek. Why didn't you tell me then? I asked, frustration bleeding into the hurt. Why wait until we reparked in front of a house with 3 chimneys and a Christmas tree taller than my entire cabin? Because I was scared, he said simply. The honesty stole my breath. Of what? I whispered. Of this, he said. Of the way you're looking at me right now, like I've turned into my own billboard. Of you thinking everything I've done the last 2 months was some kind of test. Some social experiment to see if the city girl would still like the poor ranch hand once she saw the big house. Isn't it? I asked. At least a little? He shook his head. No, he said. The test wasn't for you. It was for me. To see if I was strong enough to live like a man and not just an heir. To see if I could do the work and still sleep at night, instead of letting grief turn me into a spoiled, angry jerk. He took a breath. I should have trusted you with all of it sooner, he said. You're right. You deserve that. We stood there, inches apart, the fire crackling quietly behind me. I'm not mad you're not poor, I said finally. His eyebrows rose. You're not? I mean, I'm jealous, maybe, of the stability, I admitted. Of knowing there's a safety net if you fall. But I'm not mad about the ranch. Or your last name. I am mad about the feeling that I walked into a movie halfway through and everyone else already knew the plot. His shoulders lowered a fraction, like some invisible weight shifted. I can fix that part, he said. If you let me. How? I asked. Come to dinner, he said. Tonight, we do leftovers. Less formal. Less everything. My eyes widened. I ran away from your family Christmas, I said. They're going to hate me. He smiled, faint and crooked. Mom set your plate anyway, he said. She told me I messed up and that if you had any sense you'd run from me, but that she was praying you'd come back so she could feed you properly. A surprised laugh escaped me, even as more tears burned my eyes. And your dad? I asked. Dad said I was a fool, he said. But that it ran in the family. Then he told me to stop hiding behind fences and go get the girl. My throat closed up. And what about you? I whispered. What do you want, Luke Wesley Harper? He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the tiny flecks of darker blue around his pupils. I want you to know me, he said. All of me. The bunkhouse, the big house, the broke gloves, the donation plaques. The nights I fall asleep in a chair by the stove 'cause I'm too tired to make it to bed. The mornings I wake up thinking my brother's still out in the back 40. His voice went rough. You feel like the first real home I've had in a long time, Grace, he said softly. Not a house. Not a ranch. You. Tears spilled over. Do you? I started, then swallowed. Do I what? He asked. Do you feel like you have to rescue me? I asked in a rush. The poor burned-out city girl in the rental cabin, because I can't be somebody's project. Not again. His eyes gentled. I don't want to rescue you, he said. I want to stand next to you, at the stove, in the barn, at the church, at my parents' table. I want to build something that's ours, not something we perform for anybody else. He reached up, hesitated, then brushed his thumb lightly along my cheek, catching a tear. The touch was so gentle it broke something open in me. You don't have to decide right now, he said. If you need to yell some more, go ahead. If you need time, take it. But don't walk away because you're scared of a sign on a hill. Walk away if you don't trust me. I can live with that. I can't live with the thought that you left because of something I should have told you. But didn't. He dropped his hand, stepped back half a step, enough space to choose. My heart pounded. If this were a story you were listening to on a cold night, I thought, aware of that invisible audience again, this might be where I do lean in and whisper. If you want to hear what she says next, make sure you're still here with us. Because this is the part where her entire life shifts by a single word. Yes, I said. His brows drew together. Yes, what? He asked. Yes, I'll come to dinner, I said. Yes, I'm still mad. Yes, I'm scared. And yes, I want to know you, all of you. Even if it means staring at my own assumptions until they're uncomfortable. His shoulders sagged with relief. Okay, he said softly. Okay, that night, walking up to the big house with him felt like walking into the middle of a Christmas movie I didn't know the script to. Lights framed every window. Laughter leaked out under the front door. The air smelled like snow and roast beef and cinnamon. You ready? He murmured at my side. No, I said. But I'm here. He smiled, small and proud. That's enough, he said. He opened the door without knocking. Warmth hit me, first thick and immediate, then noise, kids shouting, someone calling, Luke. There you are. From the kitchen. A dog barking once and then launching himself in our direction. Bear down, a woman's voice said, firm but fond. The dog, a massive golden something, skidded to a halt 2 feet from us, tail wagging so hard his whole body shook. "Hey, buddy," Luke said, rubbing the dog's ears like this was just any other night. "Brought a friend." A woman wiped her hands on a dish towel and stepped into the entryway. She was in her 50s maybe, with laugh lines around her eyes and a smear of flour on her cheek. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She wore a red sweater with a snowflake pattern and jeans. She looked normal. Not like some icy matriarch with pearls and judgment. "Grace," she said, eyes softening when she saw me. "I'm so glad you're here." Before I could respond, she pulled me into a hug that smelled like vanilla and laundry detergent. "I'm sorry I ran away yesterday," I mumbled against her shoulder. "Nonsense," she said, pulling back to look at my face. If I'd have found out on the driveway my son had neglected to tell me something that big, I'd have walked home too. "Come on. There's food," and we shout at each other a lot. But it's only out of love. Her gaze slid to Luke briefly, and it said everything. "You hurt her. Fix it. I love you. Don't be an idiot." I liked her immediately. The rest of the evening unfolded like chaos. Warm, imperfect, beloved chaos. There were too many people for me to keep straight. Sisters, cousins, an uncle with a hearing aid who told the same story 3 times. A teenage nephew who asked if I knew any influencers. A grandmother who pressed an extra roll into my hand because you're too thin. Dear. In the middle of it all, Luke moved with a quiet ease I hadn't seen before in a crowd. He carved the roast while his dad made terrible puns. He snuck extra mashed potatoes onto my plate when he thought I wasn't looking. He took a shrieking toddler from his sister's arms so she could eat with both hands, bouncing the baby on his hip without missing a beat in the conversation. At one point, his father raised his glass. "To family," he said. "The old, the new, and the ones who find their way to us through snowstorms and stubbornness." Everybody laughed, eyes sliding toward us. Heat flooded my cheeks. I caught Luke's eye across the table. He mouthed sorry, but his gaze was warm. Proud. Later, when the kids had been herded toward the den and plates were stacked in the sink, I stood at the big kitchen window, looking out at the snow. Stars glittered overhead. The barns were dark shapes against the white. "This is where you grew up," I said quietly when Luke stepped up beside me. "Yeah," he said. "It's beautiful," I admitted. "Intimidating, but beautiful." He bumped my shoulder gently with his. "You still mad?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Less so, differently so, but yes, that's fair," he sighed. "It'll probably take a while for you to fully trust that I'm not playing some long game with you." "I get that. I don't want to be your test," I said. "You're not," he replied. "You're my answer." My breath hitched. "That was smooth," I muttered. He grinned, a quick flash. "I've had all winter to think about it," he said. Out in the pasture, shoveling out water troughs and wondering if the woman in the rental cabin up the hill might stick around long enough to give me a chance. I looked at him fully then. At the man who'd shown up in my cold doorway with firewood and a milk crate of kindling. The man who patched his own gloves, not because he had to, but because he believed in not wasting what still had years left in it. The man who carried grief in the set of his shoulders and love in every quiet act of service. "I don't know what my life looks like in 6 months," I said. "I don't know what kind of work I'll have or where I'll land. I just know that when I picture all the versions, the ones I like best have you in them." He swallowed. "You don't have to have it all figured out," he said. "We got plenty of fence to walk before next winter." "That sounds like a threat," I said. "More like a promise," he replied. Snow fell quietly outside. Somewhere down the hall, a child shrieked with laughter. Someone turned on old Christmas music in the living room. Luke took my hand. His fingers wrapped around mine, warm and calloused. "Come on," he said. "Mom's about to pull out the photo albums. If we're quick, we can escape to the porch before she makes me show you the one where I cut my own hair in 4th grade." "Oh, we are absolutely staying for that," I said. He groaned. But he let himself be tugged back toward the noise. Our hands linked. Later, wrapped in his jacket on the dark porch, while the rest of his family argued cheerfully about whose stuffing recipe was best, I leaned into his side, breath fogging in the cold. The stars seemed closer out there. The snow glowed faintly under them. "You know," I murmured, "if you gave anybody else this view as a first impression, they'd probably fall in love with you on the spot. What about you?" He asked. "I fell for the bunkhouse guy with the patched gloves," I said. "The one who made sure I wouldn't freeze. The one who told me I didn't have to perform my okay nest this Christmas." I rested my head against his shoulder. "The rest is just set dressing," I said. "Beautiful. Complicated. But secondary." He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath for weeks. His lips brushed my hair. "Grace," he said softly. "Yeah? I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Storm, no storm. Big house, bunkhouse. Rich, poor, somewhere in between. I'm here. I know," I said. And I did. Really deeply did. He tipped my chin up with one fingertip, searching my eyes. "Can I?" he started. "Yes," I said, heart hammering. He kissed me. Finally. Soft, careful, full of all the things we'd said and all the things we were still learning how to put into words. It tasted like peppermint and hope and something steady. It felt like being kept warm. Safe. Chosen. Home. We didn't get everything sorted out that winter. We still argued. About money. About how much work was too much. About what privacy meant in a town where everyone knew what color socks Luke wore on Sunday. But we learned. We learned how to fight like people who were planning to stay. We learned to say, "I'm scared," before we said, "I'm done." We learned to sit by the stove and let the silence do its work, instead of filling it with words we didn't mean. I took on more freelance work, then less, then shaped it into something that allowed me to stay in Maple Creek and still pay my share. I started writing stories about women like me and men like him. Cowboy Christmas nights, winter storms, lantern light, bunkhouses and big houses. Secrets that hurt and truths that healed. Sometimes when I recorded them for the channel, I ended up starting, yes, I did that. Eventually, I'd catch his reflection in the window, leaning in the doorway, listening with that small, quiet smile. If you were here with us on the ranch tonight, I think I'd ask you, what's the first thing you'd do? Walk the fence line under the stars? Stand in the barn doorway and watch your breath mingle with the horses? Sit on the porch with a blanket and a mug, listening to the wind move through the pines? Or maybe just sit by the stove with us. Us. Letting the fire and the words wrap around you until the parts of you that are still huddled against last year. As storms finally start to thaw. By the time the next Christmas rolled around, the cabin on the hill wasn't just my rental anymore, it was ours. There were extra hooks by the door for his hat, my scarf, the tiny red coat that belonged to the foster kid we took in for a few months when the county needed a place for him to land. There were boots in 2 different sizes, always half-melted snow around them. There were mugs that didn't all match, because neither of us could resist the chipped ones at thrift stores with ridiculous slogans. We split time between the cabin and the big house, between quiet nights and noisy dinners. We argued about which tree to put the angel on, ours or his parents'. We solved it the Harper Ridge way. We got 2 angels. We talked about marriage. About where we'd stand to say vows. "Probably out here, under the big pine," he said. "Probably near the bunkhouse," I said. "Probably both," we decided. If you want more slow-burn cowboy Christmas nights like this, I whisper now sometimes. When I finish a recording and the snow is tapping at the windows again, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Because there's always another story. Another woman who thinks she's breaking apart alone on a back road. Another man who thinks he has to choose between being poor enough to be loved and rich enough to be useful. Another winter where the storms are real, but so is the warmth. So is the choosing. So is the hand that reaches out in the dark and says, simply, "If you stay, I'll be right here. If you go, I'm still one call away." And sometimes that's all it takes. One winter, one dinner, one truth.
finally told.
To change everything.